And we want to thank you for joining us this morning. Just had a few little technical issue there, but we want to thank you for joining us this morning as we get started today. And we're coming to you on behalf of the Tennessee Department of Revenue and our Commissioner, David Cherigano. We want to welcome, we have the all familiar Billy Trout in here with us today. And so we want to say thank you, Billy, for joining us this morning. We do appreciate your presence here. And, Billy, he will be sharing and just jumping in as anything is needed to be shared. We got Dan Vinson with us. He is our Assistant Director of the Tennessee Department of Revenue. And we thank Dan for being here. He's going to be keeping the chat going, and so you'll see him in the chat. And we also have our Assistant Director, Deidre Smith, with us today. And so we want to welcome Deidre Smith. We want to thank her for being part of this webinar too. And she is welcome to join in, add any information, anything that she sees, as well as help in the chat. And we have a very good number of attendees today. And so we're excited about the number of attendees that we have today. We're thankful that everyone has joined us. Before we get started on today's webinar of Tennessee tax resources for your business, we do want to go over just some simple things in case you're having any problems or difficulties with your audio. If you are having audio issues, just feel free to leave and just join right back. We've heard that often can fix this through the WebEx application. There is also closed captioning available for those of you who would like closed captioning. You will see at the bottom there is the CC option, so just click that and you'll have closed captioning available. And for any of our past webinars, you're going to have a video library on the Revenue website. And you can also scan this PDF QR code on the page here, and it's going to help you see what we are presenting today and keep that for your own records. For those of you who are needing CPE credits or your continuing professional education credits, hang around until the end. There's going to be a short survey that you will fill out at the end of this, and it will allow you to get a submission in to receive that CPE credit. Typically, you'll receive that in 24 to 48 hours. That's about the time frame that we also have our recording up on the website. Right. So the Tennessee tax resources for your businesses. Looking at the registration that we had for this webinar today, there's always an opportunity for you to ask a question, and we've seen a plethora of good questions come in for the webinar. A lot of people are, CPAs or, some type of tax professional, legally, accountant, CPAs. Then we as well have a lot of new businesses, people who are starting up in business, people who have been in business for a short period of time, but they want to get a better understanding. I'll go ahead and tell you this webinar, we have tried to compile a massive amount of information within this PDF. So that way, it's going to be one of those documents that if it was me, and I love to bookmark and download things that I think are going to be beneficial. This would be a beneficial thing for you to keep because we're going to have a lot of resources in here that you'll be able to make reference to later on. Is it going to be splitting hairs of the tax manual today? No, it's not going to be that, but it is going to be something that's going to give you a great point of reference going forward. So when you come into a question about what is franchise excise or what is business tax or sales tax or a minimal license, it's going to have you a little bit better prepared to understand what that is. We've also got some good references to our TNTAP website. And so the overview for this today is, as we said, we're going to be covering sales tax, business tax, franchise tax, in short, easy to follow segments. We're not going to be digging in too deep and arguing tax code or nothing like that. But we're wanting to make sure that everybody has just a good understanding of the main common taxes and the TINTAP website. We'll be discussing tax basics. We'll be doing a preview of tax returns just to make sure that when you go into a tax return, it's not going to be, something that is feeling overly complex. I think our tax returns are laid out very good. Our website, TinTap, that you file them on is very good. This is just going to help give an understanding of each of the sections of the tax return. We'll be doing a review over TinTap. It's the utilities that it provides us. And then we're going to be looking at revenue resources. Now, this is my favorite. Like I said, I love to bookmark. I love to favorite websites or links. This is a great place where you will be able to get a lot of good resources to help answer questions for you. uh, Beneficial webinars and tax manuals. So we have got some excellent webinars in the past that Billy, I'm sure many of you remember Katie Julian, who did a wonderful, wonderful job over the years of helping create a massive library of webinars for us. And so we've got some of those referenced today that you'll be able to use as a compass, as well as our tax manuals. I don't know how many states provide industry specific tax manuals, but we do provide industry specific tax manuals. We want to make sure that if you're a contractor, if you work in the automobile industry, maybe a restaurant industry, we've got a tax manual that's going to help answer a lot of these questions. And oftentimes you may have maybe a foot in that industry or something very similar to it where that tax manual is going to help answer a lot of questions. And then, of course, we're going to have our contact information. And so moving along, we will get started in what is business tax. And business tax, it is, I would say this is one of the taxes that keeps us pretty busy a lot through the year, especially our general call center. And of course, our local clerks and city clerks and county clerks across the state. This is going to be something that they work with primarily, but we at the state, we are the one who assess the tax on this. And so we interact with businesses, helping to make sure they filed, they've paid, that they have completed any past years so that they can maintain a license with their local jurisdictions. And so, for a definition on business tax, it is a tax on the privilege of doing business in Tennessee by making sales of tangible personal property and services within Tennessee and its local jurisdictions. And a lot of people sometimes they don't, and this is something where it's normal if you are a new business and you're right now thinking, I didn't know I needed business tax. It's okay, you know now, but it's going to be one of the things that keep you licensed to do business, because when you have business tax, that generates a license for you. And that's what we're going to look at on the next slide. So I'll cover more on the licensing in just a moment. But this is going to be a tax that it applies to the gross receipts. And so if your business in a tax year, just going to throw a ballpark number out there, if you make $150,000 in your business, before any losses, before any cost or expenses, anything like that, your gross receipts, this is what is based as the sales that you will report in your business tax return. Now, business tax, it is derived from the, as we said, the taxable sales of services or the sale of tangible personal property across the state. and as well as based on the local jurisdiction of where it is that your business is domiciled or based at. And the business tax, you know, there's many different businesses, many different business, the natures of business models, but they're broken down by classifications. And so you're going to have business classifications that is going to match what kind of business it is that you do. That's a pretty common question that we see is when people are completing registration, they're going to be asking, I don't know, am I a class one, a class two, a three, a four? There's even a five, and people are sometimes not too sure about that, but it's really a very simple way of looking at it. Your two most basic classifications are going to be your class twos and your class threes. Like I could even say your class fours, and I'll explain those real quickly. So your class two, this is going to be the industry of people who are primarily engaged in doing business, but they're not providing a service with their business. And so if you were just making a direct sale of a tangible good, this is going to be a classification that you very well could qualify for. If you are a class three, that's going to be where you are focusing more on providing a service based business where you don't offer any tangible goods, but you do provide a service. That service may be something like lawn care. It could be alterations of clothing. It could be car detailing. It could be a lot of things. And then some businesses, they provide both a service and the sale of tangible goods. A common example of that is going to be your mechanics, people in that industry. And we see Billy, he's got some good notes going over here, and he says we can help you determine your business classification just by giving us a phone call. And so you can see there the numbers that he's got listed for that. But very good point there. We can definitely help you clarify that. If you are a class four business, this is going to be people who are in the realm of remodeling, construction. You're dealing with what we refer to as real property. Real property is going to be a structure like a house, an office, apartment buildings, things such as that nature. Billy, got anything you want to add on that?
Just a small thing, Jeremy. One thing that we come up with and talk to a lot of taxpayers about is the idea of their classification, but more specifically as it relates to that concept in that second bullet, and then down there where it talks about dominant business activity. Just a word on that. That's the main and principal source of what your income is. Okay. So when you ask us questions about what your classification might be, sometimes you might be doing two or three different things in your business. You might be doing service work. You might be selling tangible personal property. But besides that, we would help you and by saying, hey, what do you make most of your money doing? Okay,
Yeah.
what is that dominant gross amount? That's how you determine your classification. And then of course we can talk to you about different things. We've got some other tools at work that can help you with that. And also our county clerks and city clerks, when you apply for a business license, most of them are very good about helping you determine your classification. So lots of people to help you out on that, guys. Thanks.
Excellent point there. And it is going to be based on what your common or your dominant business aspect is. So excellent point there. And with each classification, there's a tax rate that is tied to that classification. So business tax, you're not going to be paying a different variant of the tax rate in business tax depending on where in Tennessee it is that you're doing business. That's sales tax. Business tax is going to be what's the nature of your business? What type of classification are you? there is a tax rate associated with that. And this is what I always tell people if they get a little, kind of like, how much is a tax rate? It's under 1%, far under 1%. And so it's going to take a lot of gross sales to report or gross receipts to report for you to actually see a very high, substantial tax bill when it comes to business tax. It is compromised or comprised of two separate complementary taxes. So you have your state level tax. This is going to be the ones that the counties are going to be collecting on business tax, but it's also going to be your municipal taxes. This is going to be the ones that the cities, a lot of people tend to forget sometimes that if you are doing business within a city, then that city also, if they have enacted business tax within that city, that municipality, then you also need to be licensed within that jurisdiction. And these fundings, they go straight back into the jurisdictions largely. This is going to help them within their growth. So it is important to make sure that you're licensed correctly. It is required by law that you be licensed for business. So very important tax here. Is it going to be the, what I would say the big money maker for Tennessee and the revenue collections? No, but it does serve a far amount of other purposes that are important to make sure that it is, kept people aware of. Now, businesses, they may be subject to other taxes. Just because you have business tax doesn't mean that you've got all of your other taxes handled. And so I want to say if you're questioning what other taxes you need, then hang around for the rest of the webinar. Yeah, you could be subject to sales tax. You could be subject to franchise excise tax. Other taxes that we may not address in this, but you can contact us and we can help you get a good understanding of that. But if you have questions on, what your classification is, you can also go to our business tax manual. We have that referenced within this webinar PDF document for you. That webinar or that PDF document, it will have a wonderful breakdown of these. Now, getting into the licensing part. Now, this is where a lot of people, um, probably most of the contact happens is determining the licensing. And in 2023, there was a law passed, the Tennessee Work Act, that basically increased the threshold for a minimal business license. Prior to 2023, minimal activity businesses was a business that made between $3,000 and $10,000. If you made below 10,000 or $3,000, you was not required to register for business tax. If you made between $3,000 and $10,000 in those years, you were a minimal activity business. And then if you made over 10,000 higher, you had what we call a standard business license. 2023, all that got changed. And so starting in 2023, the $3,000 limit still does apply. If your business is starting off and you're making less than $3,000 annually in gross receipts, you're not subject to business tax. However, if you're making now between $3,000 and $100,000, you qualify for what is known as the minimal activity business license. Now, we ourselves here at Revenue, we are not the licensing authority for business tax. That's going to fall back to your local jurisdictions, your counties, your cities, the clerks. They're going to be the ones who are going to issue this license for you. But we, on our side, we can help make sure that you are, set up for the correct license. So if you contact us and you're letting us know, hey, I'm going to be below the $100,000, we can help advise. Well, then you qualify for the minimal license if you want to obtain that. Do you have to? No. You can stay a standard license if you make below it. We do encourage, though, that it's good to stay in the correct license category for your business. Now, with the minimal license, these are renewed directly through your county, through your city. You're going to be the person who's going to just visit your local clerk's office. And Billy, I'm sure he has a lot to share on this with minimal licenses. We, work with the clerks a lot concerning this, and this is something where it's pretty much a relationship at this point between you and the clerks if you're a minimal, wouldn't you say, Billy?
Oh, absolutely. That's the key thing is communication, like Jeremy said. So if you've got a license status change that needs to go from one to the other, sometimes it flips quite often, depending on what kind of business you're in. It's important to always communicate with your county clerk, city clerk, or us. All of our data is tied electronically together. So when you're making a change with us, we are making a change with them. I would like to also say that if during the year, if you do make a change to minimal or standard or vice versa, and you're holding a current license in the other status, it's not necessary to reprint a license that has standard or minimal on it. When you renew your license the next year, it'll be correct, and that's fine. No one is going to hold you in any disregard for that. So you're fine. You're fine as far as that goes. Okay,
And
thanks.
wonderful info there. And another thing about minimal activity business licenses is that you're not required to file a business tax return for them. And so for some people, this is seen, obviously as a perk or a plus. It does tend to make the tax experience overall a lot easier. You don't have to go through a tax return with us. I will say though, if you have to file a tax return with us, the business tax return is highly simplistic. And so it's not going to be a burden that you're going to have to worry about carrying. But if you're a minimal license, your relationship for that license is completely with the clerk, and you'll basically just go to them every April is the typical time frame. That's April 15th. We know that's the tax day. But depending on your fiscal year end, it's going to be the 15th day of the fourth month after your fiscal year end. And so just keep that in mind. But now, for those of you who are grossing or your gross receipts are over $100,000, you are the ones who are going to be having a standard business license. Does your license, the standard and the minimal, are they wildly different? No, they look very much the same. Just basically the language on the license is going to be the distincting difference. If you're just looking at a physical copy, everything still applies the same. The license has the same purpose. It's just indicating that your business is grossing over that $100,000, and you will need to be filing a business tax return in order to renew that license. And that's how key difference works is you do have to file that return with us, pay it, and then you can get that renewed through your local clerks. Here is a quick preview of the business tax return. I thought this would be beneficial to see this. We're not going to, pull up the website and create a fictitious business real quick and go through and file it. We just wouldn't have the capacity. But looking at this, you may need to zoom in later. Hopefully, you can make this go full screen where you can see it in a little bit better detail. But you're going to see that the business tax return, it consists of schedules, a Schedule A, Schedule B, and then if you are a Class 4, business, you'll have a Schedule C that you can do optionally. Now, Schedule A, this is where you're just going to be basically reporting your gross receipts. This is where you're going to be putting in, what is the gross before anything came out. Then you're able to put into Schedule B if you have a deduction. This is where you can put those deductions in. And for people who are a class 4, this is where you'll be able to then put in if you have subcontractors that you've, hired to work within the contracts that you're doing. Don't want to lose too much time for the other taxes. So business tax resources, you're going to have your business tax overview. These are links you can click on. You're going to have the overview is going to be a great breakdown of the classifications of just a general understanding of what is business tax. It's going to have that link is going to have like a map basically helping you understand what jurisdictions have enacted business tax. We got our business tax manual. Pretty much every question you're going to have is answered through that. I reference this manual daily, memorized good portions of it at this point. Business tax rules and regulations. Here is sometimes for some more splitting of the hair type of situations where you can click on that link. It will help answer some more fine detail questions. And then we have a revenue help section for business tax articles. This is a large quantity of question and answer. Now, it's not going to be someone's question, it's going to be more of situations where the business tax is going to be speaking to very specific statements, and it'll give you some good guidance on that. You can click on that, scroll through those articles, see if any of those apply to your business. And then we have a revenue how do I for business section, and I think this is a wonderful section. It's greatly geared towards new businesses that are opening, even businesses that are closing, and it covers all the taxes. Now, sales tax, this is going to be kicking things up a notch. This is going to be more of a tax that is, a little bit more required. And this is for those who are selling, whether it's the use or the consumption of tangible personal property or certain services that are sales taxable by law. And this is going to be for retail purposes. Now, sales tax, it is collected by the business. It is not something that we collect directly from the consumer. It can be in terms of a use tax if sales tax was not paid and we need to make sure that tax is collected. There will be instances for that. But this is the role and the responsibility of a business. When you register for sales and use tax, this is you making that responsibility of your business to make sure that anytime you are selling a tangible good or a service that is enumerated by tax law to be subject to sales tax, this is your responsibility to collect that tax and then remit it back to the state. I do encourage, if you are responsible for sales and use tax and collecting it, remember, you are just carrying that tax from the consumer to the state. And so you don't want to treat that tax money as if it is uh, proceeds that your business can use as a part of the business. It is basically just going from the consumer to the state. It'll help save you a lot of headache later on. You won't have any trouble paying your sales tax. If you remember that, it is going to have a state and a local tax rate. So it's consisting of two different tax rates. Your state tax rate is a 7%, and your local tax rate, it can vary. This is where I discussed earlier about depending on where in Tennessee you're at, your tax rate may be a little different for sales tax purposes. Some local jurisdictions, while they all will share that 7% state rate, they may have between a 2.25 and a 2.75% local rate. And based on the item or the service, that tax rate may be a little different. For example, food. Food gets taxed at a different tax rate depending on what it is. So if it's food and food ingredients, instead of a 7% tax rate, if you're running a type of business where maybe it's like a grocery store, then keep in mind food and food ingredients, they're not going to be a 7% tax rate. They're going to be a 4%. And then you're going to have your local tax calculated into that as well. So instead of it being a 9.25 or a 9.75 potentially tax rate at the end when you're checking out, if you're selling food, some items may be more of a 6.25 to a 6.75 tax rate. And we do see a lot of questions on that at times, or people wanting to just check with us to make sure that the tax rates are correct prior to starting business. In the resources, we're going to have resources to help with this. But sales tax is not a confusing tax. It's just it's tied to everything. Everything pretty much has, especially a tangible object, pretty much has a sales tax rule applied to it. A lot of the rules, it's more sometimes for splitting hairs, to be honest. But for the most part, it's going to be that 9.25 to 9.75 rate that you're going to be looking at collecting. And then use tax. Now, this is going to be what happens if you have to report the tax because sales tax was not paid. So, say if you are importing things into the country, maybe you went into another country and or even another state and you purchased something and sales tax was not collected, but you're bringing it back into the state of Tennessee. Well, guess what? Tennessee does deserve to have the sales tax collected upon that, and that is considered a use tax. And so that is something that will be collected. It can be reported to us through tax returns. The sales tax return, you can report use tax. We have a consumer use tax return. And for a listing of, because business tax, sales tax, all of these taxes, there's going to be exemptions that exist for them. But this is where we want to encourage you, check out the tax manual. We have certain chapters, like here we have chapter 19 of our sales and use tax manual that's going to focus on exempt items and services. So it's really good just to be mindful of some of that information. I want to move on into the return preview. This is probably more of the common tax return people have questions about. They're just not 100% sure what is required on this tax return. So the tax return, it does have the schedules as well. But as you'll see here in the pictures, the screenshots that I took of the return, you're going to notice that we do want you to answer yes or no. Do you have sales to report? And then line one, your gross sales. This is where you're going to put in what items are the sum total of things that you sold that sales tax needs to be reported upon. Line 2, that's where you're going to report anything that you need to report use tax on. And then you're going to see down in Schedules A down here, pointing at my screen like you can see my finger. Schedule A, this is where you're going to answer yes or no. Do you have exempt transactions? Now, that's just a little screenshot. If you click no, it's going to stay a little section of your tax return. But if you click yes, it's going to open up to a much larger area, and then you can report per line, what type of exemption do you have to report? Maybe somebody provided you a certificate of resale, so then you can put that information there. Uh, if they provided you an agricultural exemption and you sold things, you can put that there. Now, Schedule B, this is just the computation of local sales and use tax. And Schedule C, this is not going to be as common. This is more for people who are maybe car lots, car dealerships, people who are selling maybe jewelry, furniture. This is going to be more for your single articles where there's specific tax rates that apply. And sales tax resources, very much just like the other one. This is going to be your overview link where you're going to get a very good understanding of kind of the basics, kind of like sales tax 101. It's just going to give you a very good introduction to what sales tax is. You've got your sales tax manual. You've got your tax rules and regulations, more for the splitting of hairs. And then we have got a very large index of sales and use tax articles that is going to be beneficial for you. A massive amount of these. And of course, the how do I section. Franchise excise tax. Now, this one we're not going to have a tax return preview for. I know some of you, I read your questions. That was a question you hope to see. Do apologize, but the franchise excise tax return, it is larger. It is much larger. We don't have the capacity, but we've got a link. Hang around. We got a link I want you to see, and that's going to be very helpful for those of you who are needing help with that return. So franchise tax, excise tax, this is based upon the entities, if you are a LLC, a corporation, a limited partnership, a variation of those, these are who needs franchise excise tax. Now, make sure that other things are done. You want to make sure you've registered with the Secretary of State. If you are an out of state business, then check with us first. You want to make sure that you actually have what's referred to as nexus in the state of Tennessee prior to just registering for a tax in Tennessee. And that applies for sales tax, that applies for business tax too. Franchise tax. Now, this is basically on the corporations, LLCs, LPs, limited partnerships. This is basically a tax that is collected on the entity's net worth, which is the 0.25%. The excise tax, this is based upon the net earnings of the business, your net income, and it is assessed at a 6.5% tax rate. And for those who are pass-through entities, it's a reduced to 5.5% rate. Now, some businesses, they do, and Billy, I'll let you weigh in here with this. With franchise excise, some of you are going to be minimal businesses. You have not yet maybe conducted business. A business doesn't just begin overnight. And so what would you say about the minimal act or the minimal part of just the $100 on that, Billy?
Well, I would say that, if you set up an LLC, limited partnership, or like it says there, the trust and the other entities subject to the tax, once you begin operations in Tennessee or otherwise have nexus here, you're going to obviously let the Secretary of State's office know, and and then also register with us. Uh, One thing that we ask you to check with the Secretary of State on is to know what they call commence date is, the date that you're actually starting. Okay, so sometimes, like at the end of the year, you might be like, well, I'm really not going to start until January, so I'm going to delay my commence date to January 1st. Okay, that's allowable at the Secretary of State, and of course, check with their office for all the details on that. But when you register with us, then you would set up for, the beginning of that particular year there, which could effectively save you $100 because, as Jeremy said here, the $100 minimum tax does apply once you're registered with us for every year that you're in operation until your entity ceases to exist. Okay, so that's super important to kind of do that the right way. So that's what I would say on that, Jeremy.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Billy. Let's go here, and down at the bottom, I've got it listed that it is a combined filing, so you're not going to have to locate two different tax returns, franchise, excise, two taxes combined on the same return. Let's see here. Resources, we got the same resources here for this tax like we have the other ones. We've got the overview, we've got the manual, we've got the rules and regulations for franchise excise. All of these right here, uh, you know, probably enough information in them to help answer large majority of your questions, if not almost all of them. But we have the help section. These are the articles. I am always encouraging people, check these out. The- Sometimes people may contact us for a question, and I just simply go to these articles and I try to reference it back to them. Hey, this is where I found your answer at. And so, we don't mind helping, but we also love to just show you so you can do your research. Maybe you're got a weekend where or an evening where you're needing to look at things we're not available. Here's where you can find an answer. And now we get to go into a section that is TinTap. Now, TinTap, this is truly, I think, so much information or so much utility, I should say, available within TinTap that oftentimes you can complete everything that you're needing to do. And I got a screenshot here of what TinTap looks like. So if you went here just to log in, you do have the login area, so you can go into the TinTap portal and take care of things, and we'll cover that. But for some of you, you're going to see all these different boxes down below the login section. Now, down below the login section, you have your payments, returns, registration, all these different sections. You can use these without logging in. You absolutely can. You do not always have to be logged in for things to happen. We do encourage it. It is going to be to your benefit, but maybe you're just needing to do a one time thing, you're in a hurry. So, yeah, you can actually make a payment just by clicking on that. You do need to have the information of the business ready. You will need to share, other details like contact details, but you have the ability to make a payment without creating a login. You have an ability to file even a return just by using that. And so for those who are needing to file the minimal franchise excise return, if you are doing a professional privilege return, I know Deidre, she's been wonderful helping us with professional privilege over the years, and she can speak at volumes concerning that. This is where a lot of people go to make those payments. The registration link. Now, this is going to be where new businesses will go to register their business. Oftentimes, people will think I just go and create a 10-tap logon and I guess I've created my business. No, that just creates a logon in the system. You can from there begin to register the tax accounts that you need, but we would advise the best thing to do is actually click on that registration link and then click on the option that says register a new business. This is going to help make sure that we get everything registered all up front, all at once. If you are a legal entity like a corporation, an LLC, this also is going to allow you to get your stakeholder information in, a lot of stuff like that, all in one go. And so this is the easiest way to handle that. You'll see in the bottom left corner, there is the exemptions. Now, this is going to be for people who are needing to obtain a franchise excise tax exemption, people who are needing to obtain a sales tax exemption. And then we have the approved brands and products. This is more for the businesses who are operating in the hemp, wine, beer, alcohol, things for them to register, vape, for them to register that. And then, of course, we have the information help section. I know a lot of you often look for a tax clearance letter. Here's where you get it. This is one of the areas you can get that out. You can do account lookups, how-to videos, customer refunds. So a lot of utility right there. But if you do create a 10-tap account, I encourage it. I encourage every business to create that 10-tap account. This is what it leads you to when you create that. Now, like I said, you may have to zoom in on this. It looks kind of small on my screen right now. I've seen this page enough. I can probably tell you every single line on this page what's there. But this is where most of the magic happens for your business. It's worth investing in. You're going to have the ability to manage your accounts, register new accounts, register new locations, gain access. You have the ability to set up payment plans, the additional services. Here's where you can get your tax clearance also. You can submit to us your power of attorney forms. You can include your Secretary of State control number if you've not done that yet and you're like a corporation. You can go through, you can even update your name and address. You can include if you need to update your DBA, if you need to update your mailing address. These are where you can make certain changes on that. And then you have your letters section where you can at that point make sure that you get any kind of document that we've sent you, any type of letter, communication. You can see that it is archived in there. Submission, I would say, is probably one of the more important areas of 10-tap. This is going to be where most people, I look here a lot. If someone says that they made a payment and they got a question about the payment, this is a key area to go to right here. This is where you will be able to find that payment. You'll be able to find that submission. You'll be able to see if it was rejected. Maybe there was an issue with your financial information with your bank. And of course, we have the revenue help section. And then you're also going to have a manage my profile. Now, when you're logged in on 10-tap, up in the top right corner, this is where you're going to see a manage my profile. The page that we were just on, this is if you click on the more menu option. But manage my profile, here is where you're not necessarily dealing with tax detail, but you're dealing with your user experience on the website. So maybe you want to create a new security question, or you want to update your email for password resets, or your phone number for two-step verification when you're logging in. Maybe you're wanting to add additional users, create a secondary logon. You're wanting to update your payment channels. Make sure that you use one bank for sales tax, one bank account, another bank account for business tax, maybe another business tax or another tax account or a payment account for your franchise excise tax. So here's where you can make a lot of improvement or adjustments for that. And then, of course, you've got your revenue help, you've got your submissions, you have an activity tab where on that tab you can basically see every function that your user ID has completed. Now, businesses who have got a lot of employees, I do encourage if you have a lot of people who are wanting to use TinTap in your business, do not share logins. Do not. Because if anything happens under that logon and it's registered in your name, then if something bad happens, it's going to be your name tied to that action. But you can create secondary logons for your employees who need to use TinTap. When you create that secondary logon, you can then reset their passwords. You can monitor what they have access to. So, very good information there. These are some beneficial webinars. I would encourage you looking at these, business tax for contractors. This is one that Billy and Katie did specifically last year, I think it was. Wonderful, wonderful webinar. We've got the video link as well as the PDF for that. We've got a franchise excise tax, how to file your franchise excise tax return webinar. Watch that. It's about an hour long. It's got a PDF with it. I promise you, it will make that a much better experience. And then, of course, we've got some sales and use tax webinars we think will be beneficial. And then, when I was mentioning earlier, we have the industry specific tax manuals. These are the ones that I was referring to. Maybe you are a nonprofit, maybe you do. We see a lot of short term rental businesses, we see a lot of contractor businesses, a lot of restaurants, auctioneers. These are wonderful. These are going to help so much. And here's how you get some help from us. If you need assistance, you can email us at revenue.support@tn.gov. If you need to send a ticket to us to get help, you can click on this link. So you want to save this and click on that link. And then if you also are needing to contact us by phone, here is our phone numbers for the general tax line, the registration line, and the franchise excise line. So I'm going to turn on our chat at this moment. We have a few minutes here for questions. We would love for you to ask us a question. I know it'll take you a second to type it all in there, but feel free just to throw some questions to us. We will definitely try our best to help answer these questions. I wish we had hours just for questions alone, but sometimes we only have a few minutes to get those squeezed in at the end.
Jeremy, thank you
Billy,
for
yeah,
doing such a great job there, going through that information. Um, I think the main thing that you said towards the end even is probably even more important. The state taxes can be very very difficult at different times. It's not the kind of thing that a lot of people have a lot of great knowledge about. You're starting a new business and you're trying to get going and all that kind of stuff. Uh, don't feel bad about that. You're not going to know everything up front.
yeah,
So when you reach out to us, we're there to help. We have some great staff at the Department of Revenue that are able to really drill down and find out, what's the best way to help you in your particular situation. So we had several questions come in here. Jeremy, do you see any that have popped up that's kind of hit your mind?
yeah. Elisa, she asked, does business tax apply to company that has no physical presence in Tennessee, simply brokering sales within the state of Tennessee. Yeah, if you are making over a certain threshold, then yes, you could qualify for Nexus in the state of Tennessee. And so business tax, even if you have no physical presence, no warehouse or nothing like that, you still can be subject
Hmm.
to business tax in the
And
state of
that
Tennessee.
economic nexus is at the $100,000 level.
100,000.
Yeah.
Is there, let's see here, are there any webinar or information specific to public utilities? So you actually will see within the sales and use tax manual that we have some information on public utilities. I think it's in the business tax manual too. There is a section where if you just do Control F on your keyboard when you have that manual open, it will help you find the public utilities. It'll answer some questions on those for you. What about the personalty tax? Can this be paid via TIN-TAP? Billy, what is the person
That's a
personalty tax
personal
that you?
property tax on
Oh,
businesses,
personal
and
property
that's
tax.
paid at your local tax assessor's office. So you would check with your county or city about that, and that is where you make the payments for that. That is not a 10 tap thing. Oh, a lot of questions. Oh my goodness. I don't know
Yeah,
about this, guys.
we love it.
Yeah, the PDF of all these materials is on our website in our webinar section there. And we have that currently posted, and Jeremy will have the recording as well as the PDF of this put into our actual library files in a few days. So that'll
Yeah.
be out there for you forever.
Zachary, you was asking about having a business tax, franchise tax, sales and use tax, and you're wanting to try to find the sales and use tax. It sounds like you may need to gain access to that. What I would advise is within the webinar, we had the phone number 615-253-0600. You can call one of our specialists and just see if they can look at the account with you and help you gain access to that.
Mhm.
And someone
Very
asked, how do I handle business tax when the business moves back and forth between 100,000 under and over? What would you say to that, Billy?
communication. You need to let us know. What do you want? What should we do? What do we need to change? Call us or contact your local county clerk or city clerk so that we can help on that too.
Yeah.
A couple of questions on business tax here that I'm seeing come up. Someone's asked when you get a business license is when you will file and pay the business tax. No, not at all. You get a business license from the county and city clerk. You pay business tax when you're over the $100,000 threshold, standard license. You pay that business tax when you file on 10 tap with us every year. Business tax is due by the 15th day of the fourth month following the end of the fiscal year, which for many people is April 15th. Okay. So that's as far as that goes too. Lots of other questions, resale certificates and then, resale certificates are important. They're issued when you register for sales tax. And you do want to make sure that you need a resale certificate and even need a sales tax account. A lot of times your business is selling things that uh, probably subject to sales tax, but could be exempt. Um,
Well, good example here.
thing,
We have someone says they import product from overseas and resell it in another companies in Tennessee. Do I need to file use tax? Billy, what would you say if they're reselling it, they import it and then they're reselling it?
yeah. So if they're doing that and they're importing it for resale, um, it would be important to document that in your records as far as that goes. A lot of times, what we'll find are people who are not in business and they're using those things for their own personal use that are coming in from out of state or from overseas, and those are definitely subject to Tennessee use tax.
Yeah.
And we do send out bills on those types of things, so you do want to be careful about that. But documentation is very important when you're obtaining a product from outside Tennessee or really inside Tennessee for resale purposes.
Yeah. And Zachary, who was talking about contacting the call center, says he does have access to it. Zachary, you may want to contact them and see if they can help just clarify then what is your filing frequency. Business or sales tax is typically monthly, but every once in a while we do see people who are on a annual filing. And so we've hit.
Nancy,
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
we are at the very end here as far as that goes. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Hey, I'd like to say also that this is my last webinar as I'm retiring here in a couple of weeks. So I definitely want to thanks everybody for your support for webinars and for the Tennessee Department of Revenue over the years. And Dan Vinson, our esteemed assistant director, is going on to other things as well in another week or so. So we wish him the very best and thank him for all of his support.
I'm gonna miss you guys.
Yeah, there you go. That's Dan Vinson. But anyway, always glad to see other opportunities. If you in the taxing world are looking for somebody that might need me, holler at me on LinkedIn or something. Who knows what'll happen? Or I'll just may relax. I don't know. But anyway, certainly have enjoyed being with you over the years, and thank you very much.
We appreciate you, Billy. We appreciate you, Dan. Billy's been a tremendous mentor and encouragement. He's been a tremendous help to all of us across the state of Tennessee, professionals, and clients and customers. He has just been even to the clerks. And so, Billy, we really do appreciate all that you've done for us here at the Department of Revenue, and you as well, Dan. For those of you who want to follow us on social media, we do have all of our links here, so you can definitely join us. And for any of the updates that we send going forward, I do encourage highly our YouTube channel. We've got a variety, a large list there for years worth of many recordings of our webinars. And then for those of you who are looking for upcoming webinars, we do have our single article tax webinar coming up. This is going to be on September 29th. Going to be very informative. Not everybody necessarily has to deal with single article, but it's very informative for those who need it. We have our franchise excise fonts exemption webinar coming up on October 27th. And then for those of you who are new businesses, or maybe you know somebody who is going to start a business, we have the new business workshop coming up on October 7th. I highly encourage that. And we are at the end, so please take a moment to complete a brief survey upon exiting. That survey is going to also help those of you who are needing your CPE credit. So for those of you needing that credit, you must answer yes to question number 4 of the post-event survey and provide your name as it should be listed on the certificate. Guys, so we thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this was beneficial. If you have questions, I'm sure there's questions we didn't get a chance to get to. Contact us. We're here for those purposes, here to help you. Otherwise, we hope you have a great rest of your day and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.